Rommel's last gambit in North Africa in February 1943. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the legendary Desert Fox, launched his final offensive in North Africa, confronting largely untested American troops in the rugged mountains of Tunisia. After the crushing defeat at El Alamein in late 1942, Rommel's forces were in retreat across 2,500 kilometers of desert, battered but still formidable. The stakes were high. Tunisia, with its key ports of Bizerte and Tunis, was the last major stronghold for the Axis powers in North Africa. The arrival of Anglo-American forces under General Dwight D. Eisenhower following Operation Torch meant Rommel needed to act decisively to re-establish his army's position before Montgomery's 8th Army could catch up. The terrain in Tunisia presented a stark contrast to the open deserts of Libya, with narrow passes, mountain ridges, and salt marshes limiting maneuverability and complicating rapid attacks. Nevertheless, Rommel's strategic acumen and the presence of roughly 8 Luftwaffe aircraft promised localized air superiority and the potential for another stunning victory. Yet, his army was depleted. Two-thirds of its tanks and half-tracks were lost during the retreat. Along with most artillery, and tensions simmered between him and General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim, who commanded the 5th Panzer Army in the region. Despite these challenges, Rommel formulated bold plans to strike at Allied positions before Montgomery could arrive, hoping to regain momentum and create a decisive blow against Allied forces. The build-up to Kasserine Pass by January 1943. Axis forces, combining Rommel's Panzer Army and von Arnim's 5th Panzer Army, numbered approximately 104,000 German and 74,000 Italian troops. However, supply shortages, inexperienced Italian units, and reduced artillery strength limited their operational effectiveness. Meanwhile, Allied forces positioned along the East Orsali Mountains faced significant challenges, including inexperienced U.S. officers and soldiers who had never faced combat, though retraining had mitigated some deficiencies. Rommel viewed American forces dismissively as Britain's Italians, underestimating their potential. While the Allies debated how aggressively to confront the Axis, Rommel's plan involved two coordinated operations: Operation Frühlingswind, Spring Breeze, led by von Arnim's divisions against the U.S. positions around Sidi Bouzid, followed by Rommel's own Operation Morgen Lift, morning air targeting, Kasserine. The dual operations lacked a clearly defined endpoint, relying on flexible adjustments depending on battlefield results. When the offensive began on February 14, 1943, German armored columns, supported by Stuka dive bombers and artillery, caught American troops by surprise. U.S. forces, scattered and poorly coordinated, struggled to mount an effective defense, with commanders like Colonel Thomas Drake reporting desperate conditions on improvised communications, including messages written on toilet paper. Despite some pockets of resistance, the inexperienced U.S. forces suffered heavy losses, underscoring the steep learning curve of transforming a small peacetime army into a capable fighting force. Kasserine Pass, triumph and missteps. As Operation Frühlingswind achieved initial success, Rommel's forces launched Morgenluft to exploit American disorganization around Gafsa, only to discover many positions had already been abandoned. Instead of pursuing aggressively, Axis units advanced cautiously, giving U.S. troops time to establish new defensive lines along the western dorsal. Rommel's command decisions reflected both boldness and caution, as he sought to balance immediate tactical gains with strategic prudence. Frühlingswind and Morgenluft emboldened Rommel to conceive an ambitious plan: encircle Allied forces in western Tunisia by controlling Kasserine Pass and the supply hub at Tabisa, then push 225 kilometers to Bain on the Algerian coast. However, von Arnim opposed this plan, preferring a more conservative advance toward the British depot at Le Kef. A compromise ensued. Rommel received some of von Arnim's armored units but had to direct his efforts toward Le Kef, culminating in Operation Sturmflut. On February 19, despite early Axis gains, the German advance faced stiff resistance from American and French forces, including improvised defenses, artillery, and machine guns positioned along the pass. Axis forces achieved some territorial control, yet their offensive momentum waned as Allied reinforcements arrived, highlighting the operational challenges posed by mountainous terrain and dispersed Allied formations. Strategic consequences and lessons learned. Rommel's decision to split his forces during the Kasserine offensive diluted the effectiveness of his attack, while Axis units breached Kasserine Pass and inflicted damage. Allied reinforcements, particularly armored units and artillery, countered effectively, forcing Rommel to call off further assaults. The battle underscored both Allied weaknesses and strengths. U.S. commanders faced criticism for inadequate leadership, particularly Lt. Gen. Lloyd Fredendall, whose distant command contributed to disjointed responses on the front lines. Following the battle, Fredendall was replaced by General George Patton, whose aggressive leadership would significantly improve American performance. Yet, despite setbacks, U.S. forces demonstrated resilience, adapting quickly under fire and performing admirably against veteran German units. Rommel himself received criticism for tactical decisions, including not securing high ground before armored pushes, a miscalculation. Partially driven by time pressures due to Montgomery's advancing 8th Army, the interpersonal tensions between Rommel and von Arnim also limited operational cohesion, as disagreements over armored unit deployment impacted overall offensive effectiveness. Kasserine Pass thus became a critical learning experience for U.S. forces while marking the final major North African action for Rommel. The fall of Axis North Africa. By March and April 1943, the strategic situation deteriorated rapidly for Axis forces, with Montgomery advancing from the east and U.S. the Second Corps redeployed under General Omar Bradley in the north. Allied forces systematically overcame Axis positions, including the Meerith Line and subsequent strongpoints at Allied superiority in manpower, tanks, artillery, and air power increasingly determined the battlefield outcome, reducing Axis autonomy and initiative. Axis supply shortages, compounded by a lack of Luftwaffe air cover and limited reinforcements, further weakened operational capacity. German forces suffered heavy losses in tanks, artillery, and personnel, while Allied logistical and material superiority ensured sustained pressure. By May 7, 1943, Allied forces captured Bizerte and Tunis, and 6 days later, Axis troops including experienced German Panzer divisions surrendered en masse. The campaign, dubbed Tunisgrad in Allied circles, drew comparisons to Stalingrad for its decisive nature and scale of prisoner capture. Axis defeat in Tunisia eliminated over 250,000 troops from the theater, depriving Germany of experienced personnel and equipment crucial to other fronts, highlighting the strategic consequences of cumulative battlefield attrition and logistical failure. Legacy and strategic implications. The Tunisia campaign not only marked Rommel's final battlefield command, but also signaled a turning point in Allied operational competence. Despite initial setbacks like Sidi Bouzid and Kasserine Pass, Allied forces refined combined arms tactics, integrating mechanized infantry, artillery, and air support to leverage industrial capacity effectively on the battlefield. German mission command methods, which had emphasized initiative at lower levels, increasingly faltered against overwhelming Allied material superiority, exposing the limits of tactical autonomy in attritional warfare. Axis losses in personnel, tanks, and aircraft, particularly 41% of the Luftwaffe in the Mediterranean theater, irreversibly weakened German operational flexibility. Meanwhile, U.S. and British confidence in large-scale combined operations grew, establishing a foundation for subsequent campaigns in Italy and Western Europe. Rommel's strategic legacy, while marked by audacious maneuvers, ultimately ended in North Africa, with his army's defeat emphasizing the rising importance of logistics, industrial capacity, and coalition coordination in modern warfare. The Tunisian campaign remains a study in both the audacity of experienced commanders and the evolving operational doctrine that would define Allied success in the later stages of World War II.